Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Brother Habib? Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
كيف الحال Brother رفيق؟
الحمد لله زين.
ممتاز. أين أنت الآن؟
أنا في بيتي.
ما شاء الله. Wonderful, wonderful.
نحن في عطلة العيد.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I ask Allah that all of your Eid celebrations went very well and that everybody had a great Eid al-Adha. And may Allah bless your sacrifices and your celebration, inshallah.
آمين آمين.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I will begin our class in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, and by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is ITKI 6205, Anthropology of Islam, on Saturday, 16 July 2022. And Alhamdulillah, I am proud of all of your participation and your assignments. Alhamdulillah, I have received many of your responses to the Maqasid lecture. I hope it was understandable, and I look forward to reading what you have written about it. Also, I want to remind you that I want to receive by the next class, by next Saturday, the draft of your assignment, the research paper. So let me write this in the Telegram group. To remind everybody that I want from you the draft of your research assignment. Okay. Here it is. I will send it forward to Anthropology. Okay. So please send me the draft of your research due by next Saturday. And I have already sent to you the outline that I asked of you for the research paper. So please try to follow the outline and send me whatever you have. I don't need the perfect copy, just whatever you have so far. By next Saturday, send me my email, your research paper. Yes, Brother Ashraf.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Ashraf, Brother Muhammad Ashraf, you raised your hand.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, Abdul Rahim, I can hear you. But I think, Brother Ashraf, you raised your hand. Oh, Ashraf has left the meeting. Okay. At any rate, so I am reminding everybody to send the draft of the research paper.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, let me know. And hopefully we can work together on this research paper, because the final copy is due on the last day of class. But I want you to get ahead and start moving on it so that it is completed, inshallah, in time. Ashraf, you are back with us, Brother Muhammad Ashraf. Can you hear us, Brother Muhammad Ashraf? You're on mute, Brother Ashraf. Can we unmute you? No. Okay. So today I wanted to go over some items regarding the Hajj. I hope everybody had a great Eid al-Adha celebration and everything went well for you and your families. And I hope it was an occasion for joy and for reflection and for greater spiritual improvement. And I hope in all parts of the world, including your part of the world, that things will continue to get better and that the community will be enjoying greater happiness and greater accomplishments, inshallah. But sometimes that is difficult, so we have to pray and to work harder to achieve what we need to achieve. Now, as you know, the celebration of Eid al-Adha is connected to Hajj. Has anybody been to Hajj before? Any of you?
Yes, I have.
Brother Abdul Rahim and Brother Hussein, you have been to Hajj. Has anybody done Umrah before? Brother Hussein also did Umrah before. Wonderful. Oh, Brother Ashraf, you have done Umrah before. Brother Ashraf, you raised your hand before. Did you have a question?
Not sir, not.
There is an issue with the sound. Okay, you could write it in the comments, Brother Muhammad Ashraf. So by saying that, I want to introduce us to one of the topics in Anthropology of Islam, and that is the matter of celebrations. So when we study anthropology, we study many things about the society, including the celebrations, the holy days, the time that is set aside for everybody in the religious community to do and engage in some rituals and in activities together. It could involve adults, it could involve children, it could involve men and women. It is done differently in different societies, and it involves food, it involves what you are wearing, it involves singing, dancing, music, all kinds of different activities when it comes to celebration. And that applies also to Eid al-Adha. So Muslims, we celebrated Eid al-Adha last week, and it's a celebration that all Muslims are involved in, but it shows up in different ways in different parts of the Muslim world. There can be different activities, different clothes, different food, different songs, and so on. With regard to the festival itself, as we know from history and from the Quran and Sunnah and from what we learn, is that it is connected to the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is a very important prophet for the Abrahamic religions, for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, because he is seen or perceived as the father of all the prophets. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all look up to Father Ibrahim as a special prophet, and he has a special place in the history of all the Abrahamic religions. So in the Muslim tradition, as you know from the Quran, we learn about the story of Allah asking Ibrahim to sacrifice his only son. And as you know, there were interesting parts of Ibrahim's life that are connected to Hajj and Eid al-Adha. One is the fact that Ibrahim was the establisher of the Kaaba, the person who first built the Kaaba. And also with Safa and Marwa, the story about his son crying and then Zamzam water coming out from underneath the sand of the desert, and the location of Bi'r Zamzam, the Zamzam well close to the Kaaba, and also the tradition during Hajj of going between the mountain or the small hill of Safa and small hill of Marwa. That is a part of the Hajj rituals. So all of these are connected to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And we can ask some anthropological questions regarding how these activities relate to our Muslim tradition and to various Muslim societies. And there can be many questions asked, and I would be happy to hear your questions. One of the questions asked is about sacrifice. Why is Ibrahim being asked by Allah to sacrifice his son? On the surface, it looks like a major contradiction, because the biggest miracle, the biggest gift that Allah has given to all of us, that is irreplaceable, that is beyond all value, is the gift of life. You see, so if you ask anybody to sacrifice anything, they may be willing to sacrifice money, they may be willing to sacrifice their job, they may be willing to sacrifice their health. But if you sacrifice your life, it's gone forever. It can never be retrieved. And the only reason you might think about sacrificing your life is to save another life. So a mother or father might be willing to sacrifice their life for the sake of their children or a loved one. But you do not sacrifice it for nothing or for no reason. And if somebody says, well, I'll give you a lot of money in exchange for your life, no matter how much money they might give you, it's still not worth the same thing as your life. There's a story that is told by some people that a person was very bored with their life and was not happy and did not look forward to the next day or the next week or the next month. So somebody said to them, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll give you $1 million, and then you can live for 24 hours, and then you have to die. And the person said, no, I'm not willing to take $1 million and just live another 24 hours. So the person said, look, if you're not willing to take $1 million just for 24 hours, why are you upset or sad that you are waking up the next day and so bored and so unhappy with your life? Your only 24 hours is worth more than $1 million. So imagine, you have more than 24 hours. How can you devalue this small amount of time in your life to this extent? So if we're talking about life, which is the most important and precious thing that we own, the greatest gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, Allah says, وَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا. Allah has injected into every human being from the soul of God. So this preciousness, that this invaluable thing that Allah has given us, now Allah is telling Ibrahim, take it away from your own son. How can that be reconciled with our values and our beliefs about the importance of life? Now, of course, we know that before Ibrahim sacrificed his son, Allah said, no, replace it with a ram or a sheep or some other animal. And so the sacrifice did not occur. But the fact of the matter is, Allah asked Ibrahim to do it, and Ibrahim was willing to do it. And that raises the question, why is Allah asking Ibrahim to sacrifice his only son, or his most precious son, or his son that is irreplaceable? The human life is once it's gone, it's not replaceable. So I don't know if you have been taught anything about this or heard anything about this when you were taking Islamic studies courses or history courses. But most human beings are unaware of the fact that in the pagan tradition, in many tribes, in many societies in human history, every year they would have a ritual to say thank you to their creator or to their pagan gods for their food and for their health and for their lives. The way they would say thank you is they would sacrifice the thing that is the most precious thing to them. And for most of human history, even now until the day of judgment, usually for a parent, the most precious thing they own is not their car or their house or their clothes or their jewelry. It's their child. That's the most precious thing they have, especially the first child. And so for a long period in human history, there were sacrifices to their gods or to their pagan idols. And the sacrifice was to kill your first son, your firstborn son. And that was essentially to show that you're willing to sacrifice the most valuable thing you have to the entity, to the creator, to the God that you worship. In exchange, because that God, that entity has been giving them food and been giving them health and been giving them life and giving them what they need to stay alive. And so in exchange, they say thank you every year, and there's a sacrifice of their firstborn son. So essentially what Allah is telling Ibrahim is this tradition has to stop. But we do not stop the tradition of recognizing the gifts from Allah. We do not stop the idea of giving a sacrifice for the sake of our Creator, but we switch it from sacrificing human life into sacrificing something else, which in this case is an animal. So the tradition of sacrificing an animal is in a way saying to our Creator, we value all the great things that you gave us, but we don't do it by sacrificing humans, especially our child. We sacrifice it, we show our appreciation to Allah by sacrificing an animal. And this idea of sacrificing an animal, what does it mean? It means sharing with people who do not have enough to eat. So whenever sacrifices occur throughout human history, it was a ritual which involved sharing food with people. So the animal was not just killed and thrown in the garbage. The animal was killed and it was prepared and it was made into food, and that food was shared with everybody, especially the people who were poor. So Allah is saying to Abraham, stop this idea from previous human history of killing your oldest son or your only son or your child, and replace it with sharing food with the poor. And that is the point, essentially, in many writings of Muslim scholars of the idea of having a sacrifice, in this case during Eid al-Adha. Now, unfortunately, what happens is sometimes this food is prepared and cooked and distributed, and that's a good thing. Sometimes it is wasted because there's too much animals that have been killed, especially during the Hajj in Saudi Arabia, in the areas around Mecca, and so it goes to waste. And some people have said, well, let's create factories and ship it to other places. That costs more than the sacrifice or the value of the animal itself. So that idea doesn't make sense. And some other people would say, well, preserve it and then it can be eaten later. Again, the cost of preserving the meat is more expensive than throwing the meat away. So that's another issue. So people are trying to look at different ways of dealing with this issue of sacrifice. And in our class on ijtihad, renewal, and modernity, sometimes we discuss these things, alternatives to what Muslims do that are contradicting our own value, because we put a high value on sharing food with the poor, but we also consider wasting haram, unacceptable. So how do we resolve this issue of sacrificing for Eid, which Allah wants us to do, but not wasting, which is another thing that Allah wants us to do? These are two values that are coming into contradiction. How do you resolve it? So some people are proposing that you don't sacrifice an animal where you are. You pay the money to have it sacrificed in a place where it can be eaten and it can be used. Or instead of an animal, you provide food to poor people. That's something other than an animal, because there's a lot of issues now with animals and the amount of environmental destruction and pollution that is caused by raising animals, especially cows. And so people are looking at alternatives in terms of natural foods, fruits and vegetables. Those are very healthy and better for the environment and they not only are better for the human body, but they cause much less or zero environmental destruction if they are done organically. And that is being proposed as an alternative to sacrificing an animal. So these things we can discuss in the Ijtihad, renewal, and modernity class. But from an anthropological perspective, the value of an animal is very much tied to certain values in every society or tribe or village that has this tradition of raising animals. So if you look at some societies like in South Asia and India, particularly among Hindus, the cow has reached such a level of importance and given such a high level of respect that they do not kill it, they do not eat it. It's so important in particularly some Hindu cultures to have a cow available for agriculture, for production, for labor. So the cow is taken care of and preserved rather than killed. However, this has caused friction with the Muslims in India, which is very unfortunate, because here we have humans hurting humans or killing humans over an animal, which as we know, the highest value is the human value of human life. Animals also have value, plants have value, but nothing is as valuable as a human life. And this varies from one culture to another, but needs to be considered when we're talking about the anthropology of Islam. Where do we put the value of human life, animal life, plant life, and how can we be part of a system that preserves the environment, which is a requirement from our Creator, but at the same time, we have traditions and we have activities that involve killing animals, particularly cows and sheep. Any questions so far? Okay.
No,
Yes,
clear.
yes, Natalie.
Thank you. Everything is clear and very interesting, Dr. Omar.
Thank you very much. Now, also, we have to realize that sometimes there is a period of peace, and that has its own advantages. But sometimes we are in a period of war. And as you know, there is a war going on now where Russia has invaded Ukraine, and that is causing huge food shortage around the world. So the people in Ukraine are suffering a lot, but also people outside of Ukraine. I don't know in your country, but I just got back from a trip to Turkey and Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and United Kingdom, and I'm now in the US. Everywhere food prices are going up. And some foods are not available like they used to be before. And a lot of it has to do with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also there are other factors in the world economy. So who is suffering the most when the price of food increases? As you know, it is the poor people. Yeah.
Poor people.
Yes.
Poor people.
Thank you,
Masses.
Abdurrahim, Natalie. Yes. So whenever prices rise, most people suffer, but particularly the poor people. So we have to rethink this idea of sacrificing an expensive animal like a cow or a sheep or a goat when originally it's expensive, and then when there's war, which is what we're facing now, food is becoming even more expensive. Plus, we're facing the destruction of the environment, and raising a cow or a sheep is destructive to the environment. This is the facts. And so we have to take that into account, both as Muslims and as human beings. We have to follow our highest values. And some of our highest values is taking care of the poor and also saving the environment. Another thing that we can discuss in terms of anthropology of Islam is this idea of Eid as a festival. So every village, every society, every culture, every tribe has festivals. And for Muslim society, that's true as well. And so our major festivals, as you know, are Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. the festival at the end of Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, and the festival that is commemorating the end of Hajj, Eid al-Adha. And so in Eid al-Adha, there is sacrifice, and there's sharing, and there is happiness and gift giving, which is very important for children, but also it's important for bringing the society together. So part of what makes a society what it is the celebrations. Now, what has happened, unfortunately, in the Muslim world, there has been an increase in Salafi and Wahhabi influence, and Salafis and Wahhabis tend to say that celebration is important, but they have outlawed singing and music and dancing, which have been part of celebrations throughout Muslim society from the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So this creates issues for all Muslims in all parts of the world when a major aspect of celebration is made into something unacceptable or haram. And furthermore, there have been Salafis and Wahhabis who have put a lot of restrictions on women. So they don't let women come to the masjid, they don't let women appear in public. So this also destroys the spirit of celebration. Same thing with children. Children are restricted in many cases by Salafis and Wahhabis in terms of what they can wear and in terms of how they can have fun. So rather than an opportunity for celebration and fun and the whole society to come together, many Muslim societies that have been affected by Salafi and Wahhabi culture or extremism or fundamentalism, rather than fun, it becomes a very dry, ritualistic observance. So I lived in Saudi Arabia for 4 years. Basically, Eid was you go out to the desert, you pray, come back home. That was it. Maybe some visits between family members. It wasn't a public celebration where everybody is having fun and families are coming together. That was not the case in Saudi Arabia. In Iran, of course, there's also many restrictions on what people can do in public and what they can wear. And so these and other countries that are affected by fundamentalists and extremists, Afghanistan under the Taliban, also huge restrictions, especially on women. And so you see this phenomenon to different degrees throughout the Muslim world. And it's quite tragic. And it destroys really the underpinnings of society. It destroys the connections within society. So therefore, in the end, you get more loneliness, you get more depression, you get more suicide. Unfortunately, you get more criminal behavior. And these are things that we would Muslim society is trying to avoid rather than encourage. And putting too much restrictions on people tends to create more issues and difficulties in a society. Then you have also one interesting aspect in Muslim societies that is highlighted in the Anthropology of Islam is now, have any of you met somebody who has gone to Hajj and came back?
This year?
This year or any year, have you had family members or relatives or neighbors who went to Hajj? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I said I went to Hajj in 2004.
And you yourself went to Hajj, yes. So many of us, if we're living in a Muslim village or a Muslim city or part of a Muslim tribe, every year there are people who go to Hajj. When they come back, traditionally, Hajjis were given a special status in society. They are given. Yes, Abdurrahim, you can say something.
Yes. In Nigeria, it used to be a great fun in Nigeria, because as you have mentioned, this Wahhabism, Salafism, they are putting restriction on anything, because people fear not to be tagged as a Mubtadi'in, Bid'ah. But in Yoruba land, if somebody intends to go to Hajj, it's a celebration galore. People will come all over the places. They'll be praying. This one is going to Hajj. Going to Hajj in Nigeria, especially in Yoruba, it is held in high esteem. So at the same time, when they return, they will tell the pilgrims not to enter. They will ask them to wait somewhere. So the entire community, with a drum and everything, they will go and welcome him, and they will be dancing, singing, and he will be coming like a king. You understand? So this one in Nigeria around 70s, 80s, 90s, it was very popular to the extent that if you go to Hajj and you don't do that one, it means that you didn't go to Hajj, even though your family will be begging you. So they will take a cloth, general uniform. Oh, this is the cloth we are going to wear on so day. Even though if you go to Hajj, it is expected that you have to go to Juma. So it's after you return from Juma, they will now say you have completed your Hajj properly. But because of the economy and because of this Wahhabism, this thing is dying down gradually. Now, when you, except in villages in the part of Western Nigeria, you understand, it's part of village. But in the city like Lagos, like Ibadan, like I'm talking about the Western state Nigeria. So that one is no more common now. So if somebody tried to do it, they will just be looking at him as somebody who has noticed, who is very free, somebody who is not busy at all. But then 70, 80, 90, wow, wonderful. They will prepare food. People will come, even though people will travel down from different states to come and celebrate with you. One of my family went to Hajj, and then we are going to is going to do what we call a welcome dance. That means that one, welcome dance. So our welcome ceremony. So welcome back ceremony. So very, very important in Yoruba, among Yoruba, crucial. Even though if you don't do it, it means that you didn't go to Hajj. They will say maybe your Hajj is a fake Hajj, because if you go to Hajj, it's expected of you to do, and then it gives the local ulama, it gives them opportunity of having money, because they will be invited, they will pray, they will give them sadaqah. You understand? So I remember very well during that 80s, 70s, I used to follow my father or my alpha to 3 or 4 in a day to go and pray, to go and supplicate for intending pilgrims, because we supplicate for intending pilgrims. When they return, we give them welcome celebration. So that's how it's been celebrated here in Nigeria. So, but this, as you have said, this Wahhabism, Salafism, they're now doing that to be local. When you are not civilized in this world, who is having time to be doing this one? That's number 2. The economy. As I have said earlier, economy is not good. People are not having money. Yeah, that's one of the major. Even though if the economy is buoyant, people will never. They will ignore this Wahhabi and Salafi. They will ignore them. But because the economy is not so good, so that is why some people are trying, because by the time you want to do welcoming back from Hajj, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And as I've rightly mentioned earlier, the cost of food, the cost of everything is very astronomical. So therefore, people don't want to incur another expenses after they have incurred the one that they took to Hajj. So that is how is it in Nigeria, especially Western state of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Brother Rafiq, for your comment. Christina, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to add, considering this thing, I think what brother has just mentioned is actually really beautiful, because like in this kind of trying to catch up, to compete with the the initial Muslim nations. I'm meaning now under it, the Saudi Arabia and this Khalij area and so on. We are losing so much of important things from our local cultures. Rather things which are connected to the culture, to the regional culture, the things which are connected to the Sharia and law and so on. But if it's not contradicting in a straight way, like the religious precepts and so on. And we know the Islam is the religion of diversity, so considering even the music and other things, there is a diversity of opinions. All of them are like legitimate, and so we have the choice to choose, but we don't have to like to push it on our neighbor or our friend, like you have to do this or you have to do that. There is a choice, and you can choose like A, B, C, D, and so on. If you're comfortable with that, it's okay. So like when we are losing this kind of like local cultures, it's so beautiful, I think, because when I was even studying in South Korea, we had this like really diverse community of foreign students from different countries, including the India and like Asian countries, China, and also there were a lot of students from like Africa. Many of them were actually not Muslims but Protestants. Or some Christians, like Christian denominations and so on. But I can really say with all my confidence, I've never seen so much like life-loving and positive people in my life. I mean, they were getting happy with smallest things. They were always like friendly and saying hi to people and asking how we're doing. And if your face is troubling, they would ask what's happening to you. I mean, it's just like basic kindness for each of us. So it's the same problem when people are becoming Muslims, and it was the problem in the post-Soviet, Russia and so on. A person becomes Muslim, he's learning Islam from the local communities, from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other and so on. So he's implementing as a part of Islam their local culture, the clothes, this kind of like wearing style and so on, which is more classic in the Middle East or in Pakistan, India region and so on. And it was looking really funny in the area of our country because it's freezing in winter. I mean, it's minus 30. You cannot wear these clothes, which are people wearing in the countries which are constantly hot. And they're misunderstanding this for the basics of their religion. And unfortunately, we have this collisions like you said about like the sacrificing a cow, for example, in Indian region. Like, it would not harm us to compromise in these questions, which are not really crucial. If for a part of the population it's so important, and like I'm not saying about even like religion or kind of like deifying a cow or something. But in general, for poor people and so on, the cow is true. It's the source of milk, and it's source of the matter of their survival. So probably people, if they had more, flexibility, and they could, perceive what we call an ijtihad these days, they could compromise on it. Okay, let's slaughter another animal. It will not harm us. But these collisions, we are unfortunately losing so much of the beauty of our diversity. And the beauty is really that we are created different. And this is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was also very enlightening. And Rafiq, you mentioned that the putting too many restrictions on people leads to deviance by the young people. And that in Kerala you celebrate with crackers and lights and exchanging gifts. And yes, Eid becomes dry and less attractive, and people may search for alternatives. So you have all made some very good points concerning our situation with the Eid celebration and how it is manifested in our societies, and how that may changing downward or upward. So this is important to consider. I also want to point out something about those people who are in Hajj and doing the Hajj rituals. In one sense, you can look at them as a whole community, a kind of constructed community. So they're coming from villages and from tribes and from cities from around the world, and they're coming together for a certain amount of time, let's say a week, and they are doing things together. Now, when people come together and do things together, you could try to understand that as a kind of community. What do we mean by community? We mean people who come together and who have shared values and rituals and ideas and language. And so in that sense, some people have studied Hajj, some anthropologists have studied Hajj as a kind of new community or a constructed community or a temporary community, which has its own rules and its own activities and its own kind of culture. And that is by itself very interesting and very fascinating. And if you go to Hajj and experience it, you can have a taste for what's going on. But there's also things that are pulling away from community. So you may know that during Hajj, where people are living, usually the people coming from the same country, from the same Hajj group, are living together and not necessarily close to people from other countries. Same thing with Mina and Arafat. The tents, there's tents for, let's say, for people who have come from Indonesia, and tents for people from India, and tents for people from Nigeria. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but the result is when people are segregated, it's different than when they come together. And so there have been some suggestions to provide more interaction of people, both where they live and where they eat, and the engagement in different rituals through Hajj, so that they can get a better connection with fellow Muslims from around the world. This is the only event in a Muslim's life where they can see millions of Muslims from all over the Muslim world. Doesn't happen anywhere else in the Muslim world at any time where this many Muslims come together for the same goal, and they can see people that they would otherwise never see ever in their life. Now, you might see other Muslims on satellite TV or on WhatsApp or YouTube. That's fine. But in terms of face-to-face, this is unequal. Hajj is an unparalleled event for bringing people face-to-face together. Some people are more willing to have contact and interaction with Muslims from other parts of the world, and some people are less willing. And this is a challenge that we all face. So anthropologically, we can look at different Muslim villages and societies and cultures and tribes and see how they try to interact with others, or they try to isolate. And interaction and isolation both have their own sets of challenges, but in general, as we have suggested in our book, the book I wrote with my father and Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman on parent-child relations, as much as possible, we should encourage our children to interact, to connect, to communicate, to play with Muslims and non-Muslims from all backgrounds, from all cultures, as much as possible. Face-to-face, interaction, communication, playing together, having fun together, doing things together. And they could be educational things, and they could be purely for fun. And when you get older, and this is interesting also in anthropology, for some reason in modern Western highly developed societies, as a child grows older, they have less and less fun, or they play less and less. And then how do they accommodate for that? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, created our psychology, created our soul, created our spirit. It needs enrichment. It needs fulfillment. It needs spiritual food, if you want to put it that way. And it needs healthy psychological activities. And our bodies and our brains and our minds and our soul and our spirit, which is all connected in the Muslim perspective, needs to be developed. But what happens in the modern Western developed so-called societies, as a child grows older, they're not supposed to play. They're supposed to be more serious. And then when a person gets older, they're allowed to drink alcohol, and then they are invited to parties, and then the parties are the place where people play. They dance, they sing, they interact, and this is more formalized into nightclubs and dance clubs and bars. There's music and there's alcohol and there's playing between adults. They don't call it play. They just call it having fun, but that's what it is. They're playing together. But this is very unhealthy. And there's so many problems with alcoholism, and there's so many problems with improper male-female interaction, and there's so many problems with some men putting drugs into the alcoholic drinks of women, and then the woman becomes unable to make the right decisions, and they take advantage of her. So this is a huge criminal problem in North America and Europe, and it's spreading around the world. So what about Muslim cultures? And this brings me back to the fact that almost all Muslim cultures, or maybe even all of them, have a way of encouraging children to play, but continuing that tradition with games between adults. And it's part of the village culture and the tribal culture. And you see games on horses. I went to Kyrgyzstan, like I mentioned, and Kazakhstan. They have a very long tradition of horse riding culture and playing games on horses. And in other societies, the adults play games with balls. I mean, it could be football or soccer, as they say in the United States, but all kinds of different sports, which are games that adults play with each other, that don't need money, that don't need any special organization, but adults play with each other. From the time you are a kid until you're an adult, you can continue to play. Or it could be dominoes, it could be with the little glass balls. There's unlimited variety among Muslim and non-Muslim societies with play, but this has been limited or destroyed by two things: by modernity, I mean the modern, Western, industrial, advanced societies, and by the Salafis and Wahhabis, who discourage most or all kinds of playing. Okay, they want you to be serious, and the focus is on prayer and on fasting, and rather than on having fun, or so-called having fun. So this community of Hajjis, when they come together, they're at very high spiritual level. And this is encouraged by the people around you, because it is a group event, and it is meant to be a group event. So in Hajj, we pray together. In Hajj, we go from Mecca, Mina, Muzdalifah, Arafah together. We do all-night supplication, dua together. We travel together, although some Hajjis, you know, they have more money, they ride an air-conditioned bus, but most Hajjis, they just go walking. And unfortunately, this can be a problem because there's a very hot sun. People get dehydrated. Sometimes people become unconscious. They get sunstroke. Some people die every year. And sometimes there is a crowd mismanagement, and so you get trampled. One time in the tunnel that is on the way, people got hurt, and they also suffered. There's fires sometimes that kill many people in Hajj. So even in Hajj, the most important spiritual event for Muslims, there can be tragedy. And unfortunately, the government over there tries to prevent that information from coming out. They don't even announce the names of the Hajjis who are dead. They don't tell us about their funerals. Oh, and there's Rafiq mentions the movie Usama by Sadiq Barmak. Thank you, Brother Rafiq. Okay, and we need to be aware of this because it's a requirement on us to perform Hajj. We should know, of course, about where we will stay and how we will get there, which airline, which airports, how much it will cost. But we also need to know how dangerous it is. The problems with the heat, the problems with not drinking enough water, the problems with the transportation, all this we should be told. And the fact that we could die there from different events that are preventable. Obviously, we know from our religion, and we discussed this in our Ijtihad Renewal and Modernity class, we know that one day we will die. Allah has already determined that we will die. We're not debating that or disputing that. What we are saying is any way to prevent death is required by our religion. So if there is a need for healthy clinics, for health clinics and for hospitals, then they have to be there. We have to know how to get there. They have to speak our language. And this is incredibly important. It doesn't make sense to be healthy and that go to Hajj and get sick. if it can be prevented, and it can be prevented. And this brings me to the issue of hygiene. In anthropology, we look at how different societies deal with the matter of being clean, what in English they call hygiene, okay, cleanliness, which is connected to health, right? The cleaner you are, the more hygiene practices you engage in, then that is linked to better health. Of course, there's no such thing as 100% clean or 100% dirty, but in between, we try to focus more on cleanliness rather than being dirty. And that's why the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us that going to the masjid, we need to smell good and look good, and our clothes are clean and our body is clean. That takes time and money and effort, yes, but it is what our Prophet, peace be upon him, advises us to do during, for example, going to the masjid or going to Eid prayer or engaging in positive activities. But as you know, especially in Hajj, people are coming from all over the world, and even though they're all Muslim, they have different levels of hygiene, of cleanliness, of ways to keep themselves clean. And the fact of the matter is, even though Islam says be very clean, some people are closer and some people are further away. There are different practices among different people that affect the cleanliness and the hygiene. Now, we can look at two extremes, okay? So one extreme is people who are so focused on getting rid of germs and making everything clean, they reach a level which is considered a disease, a problem called obsessive compulsive disorder. So they're always, instead of washing their hand once or 2 times or 3 times, they wash their hands 10 times. When they make ghusl, when they make a shower, as required by our religion, instead of doing it once, they do it 5 times. When before they eat, they wash their hands, and then after they eat, they wash their hands and their face, and sometimes their whole body, or when they pray. Islam says you need to be clean, but when you overdo it, especially with these modern antibiotic, and we saw this in COVID, right? They want everybody to have antiseptic and cleaners, and everybody has to use this hand wash and this virus or bug killer. You cannot kill a virus with antiseptic, but you can eliminate the spread to a certain extent. So it was hyped by COVID, but it exists, this extreme of being overly clean, okay? Especially sanitizer. Yes, thank you, Brother Rafiq. Now, the other extreme is, unfortunately, even though some people are Muslim, they are not following good hygiene practices, okay? They don't wash or they don't wash well, or no, I'm not talking about poor people who don't have access to clean water. I'm talking about people who have access to clean water, but they don't use it very well. They don't take a shower until maybe once or twice a week, and they don't make sure their hands are clean before they eat. And this is the other extreme. So too much emphasis on cleanliness and too little emphasis. Most Muslims are somewhere in the middle, and people who are ignorant will say, oh, because they are poor, they are dirty. This is very wrong, because lots of studies have been done about poor people or societies that have less money. Poor people can be much cleaner than rich people or middle-class people. It's not about poverty. It's about the culture and the religion and the practices of the people. And so in Hajj, you see this in front of you many times. All kinds of Muslims with all kinds of different practices for being clean and for being presentable to other people. And unfortunately, the authorities in Saudi Arabia have made it hard, because it's hard to find a clean restroom, a clean bathroom in all the areas for the Hajj, unless you're in a 5-star hotel, then that's the exception. Otherwise, it's a big issue and a big problem. And also there's the issue of public clean drinking fountains. They don't exist. This culture which exists in the United States of a free drinking water fountain, a place in the mall and in the park and in government buildings. And yes, Rafiq, Muslim countries are behind in the cleanliness index, but it varies because, you know, it's hard to look at the whole country. Some Muslim cultures are very clean, but when you look at the whole country, you can find all kinds of problems with cleanliness. And so getting access to clean drinking water is a problem throughout the world. And this is one of the issues during Hajj that, you know, the authorities there try to provide drinking water, and sometimes they throw free water bottles to people or spray people with water. And this is good, but it's not enough. There really needs to be more effort in this regard. So in terms of the anthropology of getting dirty, or the anthropology of keeping clean, the point I wanted to make is there's a wide variety. Islam tells us to be at a certain level. In reality, Muslims are at different levels, and we need to encourage each other and to help each other to reach higher levels without becoming obsessive or compulsive, without it making it into a type of disease where we're overly emphasizing. So I have friends, for example, and this is true for many people, unfortunately, from my family in Iraq. You know, a little child is playing in the dirt and they're having fun, and then the father comes and screams at the child, "Oh, stop!" And then they use hand sanitizer to wipe all their hands and tell them, "Don't touch the dirt." This is unfortunately proven wrong. Children have to play to a certain extent because their environment, the dirt and the ground, has some bacteria and has some viruses, but not too much. So when it enters their body through their hands or face or mouth or nose, the body becomes immune, right? It creates immunity against these possible disease-causing agents. If you completely prevent the child and keep the child completely clean and sanitized, I mean, using too much sanitizer, they will never have a strong immune system. Their body will not be strong enough to overcome disease. So then for the rest of their life, they will always have a cold and they will always be sick, and they will not have the strong enough immune system. So children should be allowed to play, but obviously there is teachings in Islam and in our understanding of medicine that we should not be next to impurity, right? Najis, impurity, which is a level that is very unclean, that is harmful. So things that playing in the dirt generally is not harmful, but if it is contaminated, polluted water, then that is harmful. We try to avoid that. We keep our children away from that, but we teach them properly so that they understand why some things are allowed and some things are not. So the idea of najis in Islam is very important to teach to the children and to help them understand the difference between what is najis, what is completely clean, versus other things that are just regular dirty that are not a big problem. Okay, so I reminded you about the draft of the research paper, which I'd like to see latest by next Saturday. Send it to me, whatever you have, just let me see it. And then thank you also for attending the Maqasid lecture, and I enjoyed reading your feedback on the Maqasid lecture. And make sure you do it if you haven't done it yet. It's available on the internet. And again, it's good to see you after the holiday. I missed you last week, but I hope you had a wonderful time with your families. And I will be ending the class now by saying thank you, and I appreciate and honor your presence. And I look forward to meeting you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam. wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.